Serious family court laywers, what's the most petty behavior you've seen from parents? Client once called me with an emergency. The emergency was that his soon-to-be ex-wife fed the kid Chef Boyardee for dinner. I went to law school for this. The interim court order said that my client, the mom, was not to discuss the court proceedings with the child. During an access visit, the child asked her, "When will I get to see you again?" And my client responded, "We'll have to see, but hopefully soon." The father then argued that this was discussing the court proceedings with the child and tried using it as an excuse to deny any further access. In law school, I did some intern work for a family law clinic. Most of my clients were pretty reasonable, but when waiting for my cases to be heard in the hearing room, I saw some really petty and terrible shit from other parties. But one case stood out as the worst. One guy who got custody of the family dog in the divorce said that if he didn't get more visitation with the children, he would have the dog euthanized. His excuse was that without the kids there, the dog wouldn't get the attention it needed and was better off dead. The ex-wife made an impassioned plea before the judge, showing pictures of the kids playing with the dog and video testimony from the kids expressing their love for it. It was 100% clear they would be devastated if the dog was put down. While the judge was very sympathetic and tried asking the ex-husband to be reasonable, in the end her hands were tied, since the dog was the ex-husband's property per the divorce agreement, and he was free to do whatever he wanted, provided it comported with state anti-cruelty laws. In the end, she relented to give him custody rights basically every weekend of the month, in order to save the kid's dog. To the judge's credit, she gave the ex-husband a verbal haranguing, like I've never seen in all my years of practicing law since. She warned him that she would be watching this case very closely and would not hesitate referring it to a criminal prosecutor if he slips up in any way either towards the treatment of the dog or the kids. And that if anything happens to that dog, she would fast track a hearing to revisit his visitation rights, and strongly implied the new visitation schedule would be vastly against his favor, should that come to pass. On that day, I realized I never wanted to be a family lawyer. As an intern, I saw a couple have long hateful emails about who was going to keep a unisex harmony hoodie. Almost all of their discussions centered on that one hoodie. When in the end the husband got to keep it, the wife cut holes into it which ruined it. It was pretty nice tbh. Father wanted full custody of his child. Child was in full mother's custody. Child has diabetes. Both parents must fill a daily glucose intake measured by glucometer. Every time father dropped the child at mom's, he would buy a Snickers or Twix on the way there and feed it to the kid. Then we flipped out the glucose measurings during court. Due to the measurings being extremely high, when the child was at mom's, we were able to get the child to the father's full custody. I didn't knew what he was doing. I certainly didn't advise him to do it. He just bring it to the courthouse and ordered me to present it. Either that or that time where during divorce a guy had exact knowledge of how many toilet paper sheets his wife was overusing and how many liters of warm water she overused. Probably the case where a woman sexually assaulted her toddler daughter, digital penetration, in the bathroom of a supervised visitation center. I guess her plan was that the child would see dad and start complaining about the pain. Not very smart though, as I said, it was all supervised. Yes, she lost custody. That, or fighting over a fuzzy blue couch. My GF is a family lawyer. She had a pair from Eastern Europe, we are in Ontario, who wanted a divorce. Long fight over what the husband's assets were. He claimed to be living on less than $12,000 cash/year. Wife hired a private detective, eventually found that he was hiding another home, won a big settlement. My GF is really happy. Note, she doesn't get a penny of the settlement or bonus or extra pay, she just liked seeing the liar caught. But, the wife still isn't happy. Claims the husband is hiding even more money, keeps badgering him with more legal stuff, even though my GF is telling her you won, let it be. Then, husband hires a pie, finds out the wife is joint owner of another house with her new boyfriend. Settlement invalidated. My GF immediately got off the record and refused to help the woman anymore. Repeatedly taking the kids to CPS and trying to get them to accuse a teenager of rape. Every medical record makes it clear that the mother was the only one doing any talking. What's worse, She was a social worker trained to interview child sex victims professionally. I'm just an intern, but I once was sifting through discovery that our client provided as he was trying to win custody over his son. One of these pieces of discovery was a detailed account of the mother's timeliness. Basically, if the mother was late to pick up her son, they would time it and document it, which would make sense if it was significant. But I'm not exaggerating. Over a 6-month period, she was late for a total of 33 minutes. Seeing as they met to exchange the child 3 times/week, it means she was late by about 1 or 2 minutes once a week. It was the most insignificant piece of data that I have ever seen in my entire life, but the client was adamant that we use it in court to prove that the mother was irresponsible. The worst I was ever a part of. In California we have certain requirements to meet before one parent can move away with the child. This requirements kick in when the other parent's visitation will be materially impacted by the move. My client is mom. She is a dental hygienist. She has kids with dentist 1 and divorces dad for dentist 2. She wants to move with the kids to dentist 2's town so she can work for him, live closer to work, etc. Dentist 2's town is a 25-minute drive away from dentist 1's town. 25 minutes. Between the two of them, the two dentists must have spent nearly $400K fighting over a 25-minute move. This was also the moment I realized I made a terrible mistake becoming a lawyer when I should have become a dentist. Bonus: saddest behavior I have personally seen. Mom creating fake sexual abuse stories and dropping hints to the pediatrician, in turn causing the pediatrician to call CPS about dad. All worked out in the end. Mom lost custody because of her actions after it all came out. Double bonus. Funniest thing I ever saw. Rich, breadwinning wife refused to pay husband spousal support because those laws were written to protect housewives. He's not a housewife. This is insane. Family law legal assistant here. A client of ours included a chunk of pork in the freezer in her list of assets that she insisted she get back. The lawyer on the other side came back with respectfully, "I'm not going to argue over second-hand meat in a freezer." I practice law, not usually family law, but I have a case of my own right now. My grade school aged son took an entrance exam for a gifted student program. He has been offered a spot in the program, but it will require switching to a different school within the district next year if he joins. The program is well regarded in town. One person whose kids went through it described it to me as a quality private school education for free. I have to go to court in a few weeks to argue over whether our son should join the program. His mother, who signed him up for the test and called it the most important day of his life, has now decided he shouldn't join it. I don't know why. She's made some half-hearted arguments that he couldn't handle it and that she'd have to do too much driving. But I suspect it's just because I'm in favor of it. This is getting me really down. It's a great opportunity for our son, and she just doesn't want to agree. A mother actively coaching her two kids to say that dad was physically and sexually abusive to them. She would have gotten away with it except for 2 things. The court-appointed psych managed to catch these lies out in the interview. To date, longest report I have read at 280 pages, and the oldest kid, then 10 I think, got annoyed at the mother for some such reason and recorded her on their cell phone, which was promptly played for dad. In the end, dad got full day-to-day care and mother had supervised contact for 6 months before she went to every second weekend. The ex-husband didn't want to pay what he owed his ex-wife. He thought he could fuck her over by dragging on the process with appeals. He was not only hurting her, but also his children. She desperately needed the money, and he knew that. Him dragging the process caused her to lose her job and have to move back with her parents. But once he paid, she not only moved out, but bought a house. No, not just like applied for a loan and got a house. Straight out paid cash for a full house. In the end, he not only had to pay the full amount of what he owed, but child support, his lawyer fees and her lawyer fees. I may have written about this before on Reddit. For my first job as an attorney, I clerked for a state court of appeals. An appellate court reviews all manner of lower court decisions, including family law. Every single case that was sent to our court came with a case file that included all the actions that the trial court took in the course of a trial, a transcript of all court proceedings, and briefs by all concerned parties. And, most often, you could immediately know what kind of case you were handling simply by the size/thickness of that case file. Usually, criminal cases had the thinnest files, 2 to 3 inches thick, a day or two of trial transcript, short briefs by the defendant and the state, and approximately 10 to 15 motions. Civil cases were a little thicker because the frequent use of expert testimony made the trial and transcripts longer, and the lack of a constitutional right to speedy trial in civil cases allowed many attorneys to use procedural law and motions in a coercive manner, so there was a lot of paperwork, read rainmaker. Usually, the parties' briefs included a few more issues than you'd find in a criminal case. Altogether, 5 to 6 inches thick. This was a death penalty state, and we did have many such cases. These were serious felonies, and trials took a couple of weeks, so very thick transcripts. Many required constitutional steps, and required a separate trial for sentencing. These case files were maybe 12 to 15 inches thick. Then there were the divorce cases. Appeals are not mandated in divorce cases, so my court only saw those divorce cases where the fighting between the ex-spouses couldn't be resolved satisfactorily by the divorce court. In other words, at least one ex wanted another opinion/chance at winning. These case files took up drawers. These case files were measured in feet, not inches. The largest files were those where children were involved. In other words, these people wouldn't co-parent, and so had to run back to the trial court for nearly every single disagreement, where and how to school, feed, clothe, practice religion, conduct extracurricular activities, etc. Repeatedly renegotiating child support. Repeatedly trying to change custody or visitation orders. Trying to control how the other parent managed his or her time with the child. And every single one of these court proceedings cost money, lots of money. I handled one case where the father didn't want the mother to give the child multivitamins. Hundreds of dollars in attorney fees over a Flintstone chewable. These fights were really rarely about the kids. They were attempts to control the ex-spouse through the kids. And what these litigants never realized is that, by refusing to co-parent, they essentially were giving over their parental role to the judge. In their efforts to control one another, they lost all power and control. I have been in family law for over a decade, and the most petty thing I have ever seen happen was that the wife from an affluent divorcing family had several trees planted on one side of a fence on the property, and the husband wanted them planted on the other side of the exact same fence, about 5 feet from where the wife had them planted. He insisted that we file contempt against the wife for said tree plantings. They spent close to $50K in legal fees arguing over the stupid trees. It was incredulous. I have stories upon stories of people's pettiness, but this one will always stand out for me. Another really petty one was a dad buying a money order for child support every month, but not actually giving them to the mom. He gave us copies of all of the money orders he bought as evidence of the support he paid, but she claimed she had never received them. Well, that seemed stupid, but no, he had actually just kept them and then, like an idiot, gave the original month's old money order to the mom to pay for the outstanding child support balance. He was definitely found in contempt. People can be really ridiculous.